Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the Click to Science webinar Wednesday. My name is Melissa Fenton, and I am the Extension Educator and Project Manager for Click to Science here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Today we are joined by Erin, and I'm going to pronounce her last name, Hogaboom, and hopefully I got it right, but she can correct me if I didn't, with National Girls Collaborative. And she is going to share some information about her organization and some best practices for successful collaborations. We are also going to share how collaboration with partners can help model and encourage youth to collaborate during STEM learning experiences. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Erin, and she can start her portion of the presentation and introduce you to National Girls Collaborative.
Great, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. So I have the pleasure of talking to you today about the National Girls Collaborative project and our very topic that we hold very near and dear to our hearts, which is Collaboration 101. So thank you so much for having me here today. I am our Community Development and Network Strategy Manager at the National Girls Collaborative Project. So I work with a lot of our leadership and present just at all of our trainings. So to give a little bit of background on what I do for the organization. So the vision of the National Girls Collaborative Project is to bring together organizations that are committed to informing and encouraging girls to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I would also add that we work with computer science and with computer science programs as well, and we also do include arts in STEM as well. So a lot of times you hear STEM or STEAM, and we also do include arts and computer science. So the photos that you see here are just one example of how we facilitate discussion among similar organizations and stakeholders by offering structured networking activities at every NGCP and collaborative event. So this is what's called our, what some people have formerly called speed networking. We now call it our collaboration networking. Organizations and individuals have discussions that allow them to match needs and resources. So one example of a quote of someone who had participated in collaboration networking said, "The NGCP increased my awareness of the need to specifically target outreach to girls in STEM, to be aware of organizations and approaches that effectively reach out to girls in STEM, to be more aware and effective in reaching out to underrepresented groups, and to change my organizational culture to be more supportive of girls in STEM." So that's just a kind of anecdotal example of the impact of that. So why girls in STEM? Here's just a few kind of bullets that we often use when we're talking about why this is work that we do. We know that girls and boys do not display significant difference in their abilities in math and science. However, women continue to be underrepresented in STEM at the college and workforce level. So really it comes down to being an equity issue in terms of everyone having the same opportunities to pursue career paths that they want and having the information that they need to do it. That also impacts later on down the road that STEM is a pay equity issue. So women STEM professionals make less than their male STEM counterparts, but also women in STEM make more on average than women in other occupations. So we're, by trying to increase the awareness around women in STEM and their access, it also becomes this equity issue in terms of pay gap that exists both in women in and out of STEM and then women in STEM fields and their male counterparts. So in order to prepare our girls for the 21st century workforce, it's really crucial to reverse these trends that we see here. So the goal of NGCP include, the first is maximizing access to shared resources within projects and with public and private sector organizations and institutions that are interested in expanding girls' participation in STEM. So we do this through online resources that I'll discuss in the webinar today and through activities like the one you see here, another example of collaboration networking. So this is one essential element, the collaboration networking element at every NGCP event where we have countless examples of the connections that have been made here. I have one specific example of a conversation that happened at an event like this, where it was a science museum in Florida meeting the superintendent of a local school district during collaboration networking. And the museum needed to increase attendance, and the school district needed supplementary activities to enhance student learning. So they were able to collaborate, and every middle school student in the district visited the museum. And the school district supplied transportation, and the museum provided educators and hands-on activities. So through this collaboration, both organizations were able to meet important goals and accomplish more than they could have alone. We also strengthen capacity of existing projects by sharing exemplary practice and research and program models and products. This photo was taken at an NGCP event in Louisiana. Here you see educators learning about hands-on engineering activities from Design Squad Nation that are free or low cost. These Design Squad Nation activities incorporate exemplary strategies for engaging girls in STEM, including activities that embrace collaboration and offer hands-on open-ended participation, which are several tactics that we know work very well with girls in STEM. And then finally, we leverage a network and collaboration of individual girl-serving STEM programs to help create the tipping point for gender equity in STEM. So one respondent to a NGCP annual survey, which we do every year, felt it was validating for their stakeholders to feel linked to a national project. It was validating for the board, the program participants, and others to know that they are part of a larger entity focused on their program and interest. And in addition to the goals I just mentioned, we are also focused on helping programs to effectively reach and serve underrepresented girls in STEM, which includes girls of colors and girls with disabilities. We, in order to do this, help provide professional development on sustainability, organizational effectiveness, and shared leadership. And then we work with also school counselors to increase awareness of barriers to girls' interests and engagement in STEM. So this map here is our the most recent NGC collaborative map. Actually, I think we have, now that I'm looking at it, I think we need one. West Virginia is now green, so so that's one more state that we have there as part of that map. But this map basically represents more than 12,800 organizations across the country that are part of our network. So the National Growth Collaborative has a wide range of activities, so with our goals in mind, that we do both virtually and locally to help meet those. So here you can see we have a very content-rich website at the National Girls Collaborative. The website is ngcproject.org. We run the Connectory, which is theconnectory.org, and it's a online collaboration tool that I'll talk about more later. We also run FabFems, which is a national mentoring tool, and that's fabfems.org. And then we have a very robust newsletter and social media accounts, and I'll share at the end of the presentation how to plug into those. And then finally, we offer webinars, much like this one, many of which are open to the public, and you can find out about those on the events page of our website, which is the ngcproject.org. So when it comes to state collaboratives, we also offer our network professional development through the practice of conferences and forums. We help facilitate mini grants, which encourage collaboration on local levels. Since mini grants are typically required to submit collaborative proposals. And then finally, statewide collaboratives also have newsletters and local resources they distribute on a regular basis. So with that all in mind, the background of the organization, I'm going to take a, thanks, Sandra. Yeah, 12,000 organizations. Isn't it great? So now I'm going to go ahead and jump into collaboration and what the National Girls Collaborative, how we focus on collaboration and how we train it to our network. Oh, I'm seeing that the connection is not good. Is everyone able to hear me okay? I'll take a second. Okay. Oh, it looks like it's good on other people's end. So I'll go ahead. It looks like it's being recorded, so maybe the connection is clearer there. So to begin, when we talk about collaboration, we know that there are a lot of terms out there that are often used interchangeably with collaboration, some of which are listed here. We acknowledge that there are very various definitions of following organizational relationships. For our purposes, however, within NGCP, we use the rubric of collaboration adapted from the work of Hogue, Gordon, Perkins, and Frey, which shows you typically start with networking and then move your way up towards collaboration. That doesn't necessarily mean that one of these levels is better than the other. It really depends on the participating organizations and their goals, but in some scenarios it makes sense to culminate at cooperation or coordination, and that's really what makes sense for all the organizations involved. What we try to do is help organizations identify when collaboration is the right move and then how to move up in those stages there. So it is important when we talk about collaboration that we all start with a common definition or understanding of collaboration. So collaboration has become kind of a buzzword in our field, but sometimes people may use the word very interchangeably or without a clear understanding of what a true collaboration looks like. I often find that when many people talk about collaboration, it is actually more a form of cooperation. And all of these kind of breakdowns are also available on the handout that is on the right-hand side of the screen there. So from our perspective, true collaboration includes shared risks and resources and reaching consensus on all decision making. So we like this definition because it focuses on mutual benefit and achieving something that each collaborator, individual or organization, either one, would not be able to achieve alone, or at least not as efficiently or as effectively. So with that being said, though, we also don't sit around the National Girls Collaborative Project wearing rose-colored glasses like in this picture. This picture was taken back in 2009 during a visioning process with the collaborative leads, our national leadership team members and other champions to vision the evolution of the National Girls Collaborative Project. And the result of this work was submitted as a proposal to the NSF, to the National Science Foundation in 2010, and resulted in the funding of a funding award in April 2011 that allowed us to continue to expand our work. But this is all to say that we know that collaboration isn't always easy. So if it's a challenge, why do we do it? We do it because it's important. Collaboration takes time, but increases organizational capacity to reach important outcomes. I'm going to take the time to read this fact because it's the result of data we've been collecting for over 10 years. High levels of collaboration among educators and programs engaging girls in STEM increases the efficiency and effectiveness and overall capacity of programs, and therefore increases opportunities and improves experiences for girls in STEM. So before NGCP existed and our founding mothers were doing a needs assessment to determine what kind of program to create, they identified that there were already a lot of organizations out there working with girls in STEM, but they felt very siloed and isolated in their work and disconnected with other stakeholders, including industry. Now that we've been doing this work for more than 10 years, we see through the data that we collect every single year, and all that data has been collected by independent surveyors, that collaboration allows for the creation of higher quality, more integrated product for end users, and it reduces isolation among STEM professionals, which then increases access to scarce resources. So at the end of the day, ultimately, collaboration means that we have better programs, which is what we're all trying to work towards. We're trying to give better programming to more girls and more students. So this is 2015 data, and these numbers, let me make sure. Yeah, this is 2015 data. So these numbers are even higher presently than they were here, and we know that because we do these annual surveys every year. So we know that collaboration helps programs better serve their girls. We know that collaboration leads to increased girls' interest in STEM because collaboration helps increase effectiveness of STEM programming. And ultimately, and most consequentially, we know that collaboration across programs increase girls' confidence in STEM, which is one of the greatest indicators of girls staying in STEM and pursuing a STEM career. So, given the ever-increasing demand on resources, staff, and volunteers, it makes collaboration all the more imperative. It's strategic to maximize your resources and build your capacity in order to reach specific outcomes, and that's what collaboration can do for an organization. So with all the work that we've been doing in the last 10 years of this, we've identified really these 4 stages of collaboration. They're grouped into following categories: prepare, look, plan, and build. And I'll go through each of these briefly, but feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll capture those and I can answer them at the end. And we also have a handout that, that is provided on this in the files to download that goes into a little more depth. So the first step is to prepare to collaborate. This really begins by reflecting. It's helpful to really think about your past experiences with collaboration, what worked and what didn't, and why. We always do debriefs at the end of basically every event that we do to kind of capture right after it finished, you know, immediately what do you think worked and what was a challenge, and then usually about a month later we'll do it again and look at what we said immediately, and maybe some of those things have changed, or we've been able to think a little bit about how we would actually do those differently. For example, if you're thinking about past collaborations, did you jump into a collaboration without taking the time to explore if it was a good fit for both organizations or all organizations? And then from there, once you've kind of thought about that, take an inventory of your organization or your resources if you're an individual, and create a quick summary. What do you have to offer? What is it that you need? Think of this, you can think of it somewhat like an elevator speech that goes to the core of your organization, your strengths and challenges. I encourage you that when you're creating this summary to really think outside the box. I've heard programs tell me before that they didn't have any resources to give, and I asked them, well, do you have girls interested in STEM? And they say yes. And I say, do you have space? And they say yes. So the moral here really is that everybody has something to offer. So in taking and dividing kind of your inventory, whether it's personal or organizationally, try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, looking in at your organization or resources, and imagine what they might see as an available resource or a need. And I would also say try to be as specific as possible, especially if you're focusing on a particular project or program that you're trying to implement. Okay, I'm going to take a second here and say, okay, oh, awesome. I already see, I just took a little peep at the thing, and yes, I will talk about how to get involved with NGCP. So after you prepare, you want to look for collaborators. When you're looking for collaborators, you want to think about who can benefit from what you have to offer, who needs your resources. Effective collaborations tend to bring together organizations that can meet each other's needs and leverage each of their resources. So you want to look for assistants or guides that can help you. These can be other people, organizations, or publications that may be able to inform the work you're doing. Look for resources that may help you identify appropriate collaborators. Who has the expertise that you need, and where can you find it? Resources on developing collaborations is also very helpful. So maybe look into collaborations that are already happening and maybe reach out to them and see if they have suggestions. And then finally, you want to network with a purpose. For example, when you meet someone and tell them about your organization or program, include your needs and resources. This takes networking to the next level to explore ways that your two organizations might be able to work together. You are likely already identified these in your prepare phase, so you should be all set to go. You already have those in the back of your mind, what you know you need and what you can offer. So the next stage is planning. So to begin, planning, we just always drive this factor home. It's really important to be flexible and patient. This may seem very obvious, but it's still worth noting because it's not always easy in practice. This is especially important given that collaborations often bring together organizations that work differently. So you'll need to be explicit about benefits. You'll need to really kind of explain maybe how your organization functions so that you can understand how that might be different than the other organization you're working with. And that is on an individual basis too. If you tend to be a certain type of person that works a certain way, it's really good in the beginning to be flexible and patient and communicate, those styles that you're coming in with. You also want to, and then you also need to be explicit about the benefits. So refer back to the challenges of collaboration. Partners need to believe that there is value in collaboration and have a clear understanding of the benefits for each partner. So being really clear about that off the bat is also important in your planning. And then finally, create a collaboration agreement. Research supports the benefits of creating a formal agreement that include what each partner agrees to, contributes to the collaboration, has been found very beneficial, and that way both parties can kind of be held accountable. So once you've done that planning, now it's the fun part. It's time to build your collaborative project. You may already have something, have already started with something right off the bat. At which point, now is just the process of actually building that. But you may be coming together as an organization thinking, gosh, there's something there, but we're not quite sure what. And so this is the time where you would kind of take to building that project. So it may go without saying, but we've seen plenty of collaboration fizzle in the planning stage because of irregular communication. So communication is imperative to keep a collaborative project moving along, especially if the collaborating organizations work differently, as mentioned in the challenges to collaboration presented earlier. So in line with being flexible, you may also have to adapt. The nature of collaboration is that both organizations are different and unique in the resources they bring, meaning they may have dissimilar structures and styles. So collaborations, given that they are a result of two or more organizations working together on a project, may require adaptations along the way, and you just have to kind of go in knowing that that's a possibility. And it's that adaptation is incredibly important to to moving forward. It's also really important to celebrate successes. Even if there are challenges along the way, celebrating successes, even just small ones, is a way to highlight the positive results of a collaboration and help partners realize what has been accomplished by the collaborative relationship. So even if they're small ones, it's always important to kind of point those out and celebrate them. And they could actually, you can build small successes into really a larger and greater success. So just always kind of trying to stay positive in that sense. And then finally, it's imperative to, like I said, debrief the collaboration. Similar to the first best practice on this list that focuses on reflecting, it's important to debrief what worked and what didn't and why. What would you do differently next time? And will the collaboration continue in some form? So not all collaborations continue forever and ever. Some are really project-based, and it doesn't mean that those same organizations can't collaborate in the future, but it's important to know that if your collaboration is not necessarily, it's not a failure if it doesn't last forever. So that's just an important kind of factor to know and be aware of when you're going into a collaboration. So that is the wrap-up of the Collaboration 101 section. So I think since it looks like there aren't any questions or anything yet in the chat, I'll kind of keep going on. And I did see Jamie says that she'd love to be part of this amazing organization. Thank you so much. So I'll go ahead and move on to how you can kind of get involved with the Natural Growth Collaborative Project. So the first piece I'm going to talk to you about is the Connectory, which is our kind of online collaboration tool. The Connectory is the largest database of youth-serving STEM programs that exists. It originated in 2011 as part of Time Warner Cable's Connect a Million Minds initiative, and it's now managed by us, the National Growth Collaborative Project, in partnership with the After School Alliance, Aztec, EDC, Maker Ed, and NAA. It was made possible by Time Warner Cable through their initiative, but now we work with funders from Google, the Noyce Foundation, and the Boroughs Welcome Fund. So the Connectory has two primary audiences and one tertiary audience. The first and primary audience is families. So the Connectory showcases STEM opportunities to families for free. When a parent or caregiver visits the Connectory site, they are automatically geolocated and shown youth-serving STEM opportunities in their area. These opportunities are input by the Connectory's secondary audience, STEM programs. STEM programs can use the Connectory to both promote these opportunities to families and connect with potential collaboration partners, which makes it very relevant on this webinar. So when a program registers in the Connectory, they are prompted to list both their needed and available resources and any collaboration interests that they have. So as a STEM program, you can log into the provider portal in the Connectory and search for other programs according to their listed resources and interests, location, audience, etc., much the way that a parent can simply visit the homepage of the Connectory and navigate opportunities. So this is a great kind of back-end way of finding online collaboration possibilities. The final feature, and I won't go into too much depth about it, but we do also, an example of a really fantastic collaboration is the Connectory with Volunteer Match. We have an API connector that makes it so that when Connectory programs go into Volunteer Match and input details about their STEM volunteer listings, those listings are also shown on our Connectory volunteer listing page. So it's basically a way for volunteers that know they want to volunteer specifically in STEM, they can go, rather going directly to Volunteer Match and having to search, can come to the Connectory and see Connectory programs, any volunteer opportunities that they've listed. So I thought it would be helpful just to briefly show you kind of the back end of what a Connectory program looks like, specifically looking at the collaboration breakdown. So this program is located in Austin, Texas. So you can see here we're on the collaboration breakdown tab, and they have as needed resources, boys interested in STEM, equipment donations, funding and sponsorship, girls interested in STEM, and then actually you can't see it because it goes below the needed resources, but there they have available resources, and so they have a list there of what available resources they have. And then as you can see here on the right hand side, it has collaboration interests like curriculum development, joint event planning, outreach and community events, things like that. So it's a really great example of how how an organization could find another program on here. Moving right along to another resource that we have that I mentioned in the beginning is our FABFEMS database. This database basically came out of, but as we worked with our networks and collaboratives, we heard often that girls serving programs want to bring professionals into their classes, but it was difficult for them to find them and vet them and prepare those role models. So simultaneously, we were hearing from many women role models who were looking for ways to volunteer but found it difficult to find programs and were not always immediately aware of how to interact with girls. So the FABFEMS project is a solution to these barriers, connecting role models and programs together to create successful STEM experiences for girls. So this project's main tool is the FABFEMS website, which can be found at fabfems.org. And on that site, you can search role model profiles, become a role model, and browse resources. So the website is being used by role models, girls serving STEM programs, looking for role models, and parents and girls searching for career information. So currently there are over 700 FABFEMS enrolled throughout the country, and the database really does grow every day. So every time we have an opportunity to talk about FABFEMS, when I have a listening and willing audience to hear about this great resource, we really try to say, if you are a woman in STEM, we definitely encourage you to go onto this site and put your information in there and and become a resource. And really the FABFEMS experiences is involved or not as you would like it to be. Some mentors just want to have their profile, a photo and a description of what they do up there, and that's fine. Others are willing to be contacted online to review resumes, things like that. And then there's obviously the kind of typical understanding of mentorship where the girls and mentors will get together in real time. So those are all possibilities on the FABFEMS directory. You just indicate as a mentor which one you prefer. So there was a lot of kind of questions about how to get involved with NGCP. So here you can see our website, ngcproject.org. We've got a lot of really great resources and exemplary practices on there. You can follow us on social media at NGC Project. That's on both Twitter and Facebook. We oftentimes have local events. So as I described, each, we're active all over the state. So if you're interested in, in getting involved in your state, you can go onto the NGC project site and find out the contact information for your specific Girls Collaborative project, which is, then you can join that collaborative leadership team. And then finally, utilizing those two resources that I just touched on, the Connectory and FabFems. So that, I think, is it for me. Melissa, I guess I'll turn to you whether you want to do any questions now or after the full presentation.
Thanks so much, Erin. I noticed Jamie's question, which if you are in one of the states that wasn't colored in green in that map that you showed us earlier, Nebraska happens to be one of them, unfortunately. That's where Click to Science is located, and that's where Jamie's located. How would you get a collaboration started with Nebraska and National Girls Collaborative project, for example?
Yeah, oh, that makes me so happy to hear that. So we are all the time, the way our model is set up is it really, the efforts of the National Girls Collaborative or the statewide collaborative should be complementary to efforts that are already being done in that state. So we don't do a lot of going to states and trying to get them to sign up collaboratives because we know that that's not sustainable. So basically the way we bring in new collaboratives, and this just happened with Mississippi and West Virginia, is that we do an informational kind of webinar like this, and somebody comes to us and says, hey, you know what, we're already doing this kind of work. We want to be part of this larger network. What are the steps from there? And then we just work with them to kind of figure out and make sure that, that the pieces that are there, and happening, and that will make for a successful collaborative. But really, I mean, as long as we have a strong lead or someone who's really interested in kind of taking it on, we provide a lot of support in terms of pairing states up with other states that are very similar. Actually, Montana is one of our most active collaboratives, I would say. So, and Susie Taylor, who's in one of these photos here, one of the things we would do, for example, in Nebraska is pair, Nebraska up with Susie so she can kind of also provide extra help in talking through the model and how to get something started in your state. So it's something we're very familiar with, and we expanded from just when we started, we were just in the Pacific Northwest in Washington and Oregon, and now we're in 41 states. So if anybody is interested, I'll provide my email in the chat, and you can definitely feel free to reach out. If you already have a collaborative in your state, I'm also happy to put you in touch with the whoever the lead organization is in your state. But if you don't have one in your state and you're interested in kind of being part of getting it started, please, feel free to email me, and we can kind of investigate, and go from there, and make sure that, that it's the right fit. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, Erin, for walking us through that. So it looks like Jamie shared that we have an interested person from Nebraska, so that's great that you're sharing your email address, and hopefully that moves forward. So I'm glad that the webinar could be a connecting point for getting that going. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to type those into the chat pod. We're going to, in the interest of time, go ahead and move on to our next portion of the webinar. So we decided to take a look at both the program level, what does collaboration look like between programs and organizations, and then how does that trickle down and impact the youth in your program. So maybe what are some strategies that staff can use if you're having a really collaborative program, how is that impacting the youth, and just progress through the material that way. So Click to Science has a skill called encouraging collaborative STEM work. And to us, this means that staff are helping youth effectively collaborate and interact during STEM learning experiences. I'm sure most of you know that collaboration is a 21st century skill that is important to all careers, and especially those in STEM. So STEM is a collaborative field where scientists, engineers, mathematicians, statisticians, technology experts are working together on a team to conduct research and solve problems. Gone are the lone mad scientist stereotypes, where I'm the lonely worker in the lab by myself. And it is very important that we instill in youth the skills to work successfully with others. And after school is an excellent time to teach this 21st century skill. So we always share one of our resources from Click to Science as part of our webinars, and the resource that we selected just to share with you today is Watching for Best Practice, and that's available in the Files to Download pod, along with Erin's Collaboration 101 Best Practices. So feel free to download those files whenever there's a break in the presentation at the end of it, just so that you have those available. The Watching for Best Practice resource is a meeting resource that focuses on a video, and it can help your staff think about the language that they use and what they do to encourage youth to collaborate during some learning experiences. So now we want to hear from you. We've done a lot of talking on the webinar. I want to give everybody a chance to loosen up those typing fingers and share that based on the information Erin shared about National Girls Collaborative and best practices in collaboration, what you think that program collaboration could impact youth collaboration. So I'm going to pull up a separate chat pod here and just want you to share your thoughts of how program collaboration can impact youth collaboration. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone and give you just a couple minutes to type in that chat pod that showed up in the middle of your screen and covered the photograph. Your ideas about how program collaboration, just like Erin talked about, can impact collaboration between youth in your programs. Looks like we've got a few people still typing, but just to keep our discussion moving along. So we've got some ideas in the chat pod that when we collaborate, we're able to bring more resources into programs for youth, specifically robotics or science Olympiad, more caring adults for youth, activities that can't be done in our programs or aren't being done otherwise. It models the skill and the benefits to youth. I noted that it increases the capacity, which means more STEM and more opportunities to practice collaboration. I think anytime we can show youth that we are working together to bring them more opportunities, more caring adults into their lives, more experiences that they can be a part of, this is just only going to encourage them to collaborate as well. And Sandra shared that it's a great way to connect youth with role models in their community, and that they don't have to tackle big problems on their own, and this extends to all other areas of their life. So thank you so much for sharing those ideas in the chat pod. And this question made me just kind of look to see what research was out there. And I found an article, and it's not necessarily related to youth collaborating, but I thought it was interesting that the article advocated for using a team of teams approach to leadership in formal education. And it noted that collaboration creates a positive culture and results in prepared teachers and students who are prepared to learn. The students achieved more in schools where faculty, staff, and parents engaged in collaborative relationships. So even though this research specifically discusses leadership and school culture, we can also imagine that a program that is collaborating well with local partners and other programs would also have a positive culture where youth can thrive. So I appreciate everyone sharing these ideas into the chat pod, and we will go ahead and move on to our next section. So now we're going to talk about how we can encourage collaboration during some learning experiences, and I wanted to use the National Girls Collaborative Best Practices Framework, focusing on preparing, look, plan, and build, to just talk a little bit about what that can look like with staff in programs. So to ensure youth have success collaborating during STEM, you can prepare by thinking about how you'll group youth and assign roles for the learning experience. So if you work in a program every day, you have a pretty good idea of the youth that you work with. So especially if you're working with the same club and you've got the same youth for a semester or a quarter, or you take on, all of the kindergarten and first graders, and then you take them through, STEM activities, depending on how it's set up, you do get to know the youth that are in your programs. And you know who works well together, who doesn't, and who won't get anything done if they are in a group together. So you can be deliberate in grouping youth, and if you find success in those groups, use the same ones for a semester's worth of activities or a quarter's worth to make things easier on you. If you're new to a program or you're coming in just to do a club, you can observe for a couple of sessions to see kind of what the cliques are and make other choices about grouping youth. So you can be intentional with grouping them according to color, for example, if you have name tags, or you can hand hand out pencils that have a certain color, or hand out pieces of gum that have a certain color. Or, there's a lot of different strategies of how you can make it look random, but it's intentional, grouping together the youth to make sure that you're setting them up for success. We don't want to set youth up to have a horrible experience working together. So anything that you can do ahead of time to make that go well is always a great idea. Also thinking of the strengths and challenges specific youth bring to your program and group them accordingly. So just an idea is if you have youth on the autism spectrum in your program who may have difficulty working with others, and you know one youth who's particularly kind of patient, you could possibly group them together. That could make for a great experience for both youth and a successful learning experience in that activity. So just once again thinking about the youth in your programs and how you can connect the youth to set them up for success. Other ideas are to assign roles to youth or have prepared roles to include in the learning experience. So you can either ask youth to select their role, or you can assign them based on your knowledge of their strengths and interests. So you're setting them up for success and making collaboration easier by making their contributions to the learning experience clear. And we'll see an example of this. It's not readily available in the video, but I'll talk a little bit about it when we watch the video together. So for look, we want to look for activities or curriculum that structure learning experiences that encourage collaboration. So we have 3 activities that work well for this skill on our website under Encouraging Collaborative STEM Work that you can check out using the link in the web links pod. So that's the web link titled Encouraging Collaboration Activities. These activities have some specific experiences. So if you're doing some STEM activities from a specific curriculum and all of them are youth working on their own, maybe mix things up and try grouping them as teams. Or if you are really wanting to work on this skill, for a week, select activities that have them working in groups together. And next is to plan. So when you have a plan for how you'll encourage youth to work together, you should feel more confident in your ability to keep youth communicating and continuing that collaboration throughout the activity. So some strategies to include in your plan are to develop agreements or shared rules around working together. So you want to give youth an idea of what collaboration looks like because they may not know what you expect from them in your activities for it to look like for them to be collaborating. So engaging youth in developing these rules will also give them a sense of ownership and can give you a nice introduction to the need for collaboration during STEM. I'm going to share a video from the Click to Science website that provides an example of an agreement setting the stage for youth working positively together. So I want to point out specifically that at the beginning of the video, you'll hear youth reciting an agreement that was developed in that program, and that's how that program operates, and that's their culture. And then there's another segment toward the end of the video where you discuss the expectations of what they will do as observers. So let me go ahead and get that video pulled up here. And if you have difficulty viewing it, I do have it linked up in the web links pod under Supporting Youth Interactions. So if you are having a hard time watching the video, go ahead and click on it in that pod.
So I want everybody to get into groups of 2. I want Michael and Caesar, Brenda and Larissa. We are going to be starting the activity with the agreements.
Look at the speaker.
Look at the speaker.
Have fun.
Have fun.
In this video, you'll see many examples of adults creating opportunities within the activity to encourage students to collaborate together on their project. Identify ways staff utilize youth to lead the learning in the classroom.
What are the different kinds of shapes of the different boats? Eduardo.
Speedboat's pointing at the front, it kind of curves as it gets to the back, and at the very back it's like a straight.
Okay, awesome. Tell each other what you already know about boats.
You have to make sure it can hold and it can float.
Mr. Jason,
Yeah.
are we allowed to put the marbles on the boat?
Yes, you guys are going to be putting the marbles on the boats yourselves.
So we could put it on any way we like?
Yes.
Okay.
If you did it bigger, if we put a whole bunch of marbles, it would just start like sinking.
Sometimes the marbles
Put a
roll
double
around.
layer.
Okay, so you guys think that double layering will work well?
Mr. Jason, so we should divide it, like the boat, into like a special kind of way, so the marbles will have the same.
And I think at the bottom, like we should glue something probably.
How can we be respectful while other people are testing their boats?
We're gonna be at like where we're sitting at right now.
While other people are testing the boats, please stay seated. As a group, we're all going to be counting together, just to make sure we're holding everybody accountable. What kind of shape do you guys use?
It's flat and the water is like, it's like
Wavy, so
Yeah.
it'll probably go up with it.
Okay, so you think that'll work with the waves?
yeah.
So, here's your guys' marbles. 17, 18, 19.
All right, so hopefully you noticed at the beginning of the video, especially where they set those expectations for how the group was going to operate, and then also at the end where they were actually testing their foil boats, talking about what was expected. You know, we're all going to stay seated, we're going to count together. So going over those expectations, you know, they're more behavioral in parts of the video, but they can be expectations for collaboration. Is really important to have a successful collaborative learning experience. So you can also be explicit about roles and expectations. If you're facilitating a series of activities that provide opportunities for youth to take on specific roles, try to make sure that you have clear expectations for those roles. So we'll watch a video about an activity where there's a geologist, an engineer, and an architect involved in developing a structure that is earthquake proof. So if you have the specific suggestions for what the geologist will do, what the engineer will do, and what the architect will do, this will give you the real-life experience of working on a team with many different professionals, and also give them some guidelines for what they're supposed to be doing, so you don't feel like you're lost and just aimlessly working on something together. And finally, things won't always go as planned. We know that when we're working with youth. So be prepared to encourage youth to talk to each other and continue working together. You may also have to help youth work through frustrations with each other and the process. So have your strategies in place to redirect them or help them come to a decision that your program ascribes to. So if it's, you know, taking a little time out to think when we get frustrated, or however you guys handle that, you know, that may be part of helping them work together and have a successful collaborative experience. So we're going to move on to another video, and I'm going to get that pulled up here shortly. In the video, there's an activity that shows the facilitator reinforcing collaboration in activity with youth building that earthquake-proof structure. So as you can see in the photo here, they have specific job roles as an architect, an engineer, and a geologist. So as you watch the video, I want you to pay attention to how the staff member encourages youth to collaborate. So take note of what she specifically says and does that encourages youth to work together. And we'll share what we saw in a chat pod following the video. So I'm going to pull up that video, and then we're going to watch it together. Once again, that is linked in the web links pod as group collaboration. So you can click on that link and watch it in your web browser if you are unable to view it as part of the webinar. So once again, take note of what the staff says and does that encourages you to work together as you watch this clip.
Watch as the groups give and receive feedback to effectively promote change in their designs. Listen carefully as students react to the process and what the positive outcome can be of group collaboration.
We are going to collaborate because engineers, teams, talk with other teams. I'd like to see the Indigo team first walk over here and surround our green team. So Mohit, it sounds like, do you have an idea to share?
We're still working on the walls because we haven't got enough yet. But then I think we'll just do one story because we were thinking about 2 stories, but it wasn't enough.
Some tips we have for you guys is to make it a little smaller so we have enough popsicle sticks to make a second floor.
Can you share with me something you noticed from your group or someone else's group that you thought worked well that we could add to the redesign? Yeah.
I thought that the pink table's like floor was really stable and held the design really like tightly so I wouldn't fall over.
Keep listening to each other's ideas. It's okay to learn from each other, and it's all right to borrow and collaborate on ideas.
Inside of this, so that the entire thing will open. 5 more minutes and then we're going to test.
5, 4, 3, 2,
2, 1.
Yeah! We survived!
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that video and pull up a chat pod. So just share any of the strategies that you saw the staff member using in the video. And if you share them in the other chat pod, that's fine too. But just wanted to give you a specific place to share these. So I'll take a moment to mute my mic and give you time to type. But once again, share what you saw the staff member say that encouraged collaboration. I see we still have a few people typing in on the chat pod, but I wanted to summarize what I saw coming through. And so you all pointed out some excellent strategies that you saw in the video. So they're pointing out strengths and not just focusing on the challenges, borrowing and building on each other's ideas. That's what we do. We all are sharing ideas. You may, see something that someone else did and adapt it to fit your situation more appropriately, but it's great to point that out to youth that you can borrow each other's ideas. Inviting people to share and asking for reflections, of course, celebrating those successes at the end. And they are so excited that they survived the earthquake. I'm sure you noticed that at the end of the video. Sandra pointed out that those real-world roles help youth connect what they were doing to how professionals work in STEM careers. They learn that being part of a successful team depends on collaboration. And, Erin pointed out that there was good gender equality in the video, both seeing a boy and a girl sharing their ideas. And they encourage teams to work together and then give input to other teams, as well as using the word collaboration. So, we can talk about teamwork, we can talk about all these different ways of framing that skill, but using the term collaboration, I think, gives you the idea of, this is what truly collaborating looks like. So I liked how the staff person used that specific terminology in there as well. And you can define it however you want for your program. You can say collaboration looks like this, and it is teamwork, and it is these things, and it is borrowing ideas from one another, or however you want to structure it. But using that language is really important to help youth recognize what that looks like in practice. So it looks like Erin may still be typing into this chat pod, so I'll just give her a moment to finish that up, and then we will move on to our last couple of slides. Oh, great. Erin was going to agree with me that using the term collaboration is fantastic, so excellent. I'm going to go ahead and hide that pod and move on to our last section, which is build. So just like National Girls Collaborative encourages programs to build on their successful collaborations, you can reinforce successful teamwork with your youth. So encourage communication during and after the learning experience. If youth are collaborating, they are talking. Celebrate when youth worked well together. Point out their successes and how they came together to answer the question or solve the problem. And then debrief the experience. So spend some time talking about how it felt to work together, what was hard, and what worked. Reflecting helps deepen youth's learning, and this is true for building their skills as well. So just like we want to reflect and process what we learned during a STEM experience, we can also reflect and process on the skills that we used during that learning experience. So if we work together to build this really complicated bridge that I'm showing in the image on the screen, talking about what it was like to do that together is important for youth reflecting on, working as a team can be hard, but we accomplished it, and here's how we accomplished it. So I want to invite you now to share your takeaways in the main chat pod. So anything that you found, maybe not earth-shattering, but really exciting about the content that we shared today, and that can be anything that Erin shared, anything that I shared in the chat pod today. We'd love to hear, what you got from the webinar, as well as sharing that with your peers. It's important to learn from each other, and so if you have something that you're going to go back and do in your programs, or something that your program does that you want to share with people, go ahead and type those into the chat pod now. So please take just a moment to share your takeaways. I'll go ahead and share my takeaway. The FabFems website is amazing. So I plan on sharing that website with some of my colleagues here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, encouraging them to sign up so that they can, become a mentor to young girls in STEM in their communities. So I'm going to go through our announcements quickly, and then it looks like everyone's typing in there, and then we'll kind of talk about the takeaways. So we really appreciate you choosing to spend some time with National Girls Collaborative and Click to Science to learn about encouraging collaborative STEM work and sharing your ideas and expertise with your peers. We also want to thank our guest Erin for sharing her expertise with us today. Our next webinar is February 8th, and our focus will be on making connections to STEM careers. We will also be at the Beyond School Hours Conference in February and National After School Association Convention in March. So if you're attending, stop by and visit our booth and plan to attend our sessions. We have links on our events page that has our booth number, our sessions, and the times that we are going to be presenting, so please check those out. We are also going to be sending out an announcement fairly soon for our first Click to Science Trainer Institute. That's going to be held on April 24th through 25th. Here in Omaha, Nebraska. So registration is not open yet, but it is a national, open to anyone training institute for those who want to be able to deliver Click to Science training to their staff or volunteers. So just look for that announcement that's going to come through. And I'll just briefly look through the takeaways here and summarize those for you. So Sandra is taking away the idea about how important it is to reflect on collaboration and help youth process that experience. Patsy is looking forward to looking through the website resources to incorporate. We'll share this great resources with county agents and sort through the websites to see all the resources available. Sandra shared the link to our upcoming events, and Erin liked the reminder to make youth a part of the process from the very start, asking youth what their expectations were rather than just starting stating what they were from your perspective is a great way to start that collaborative relationship. So we are almost out of time. I'm going to give you just a moment to click on the web resources and get those links. And then the webinar recording will be available. We have it online on our on-demand webinars page, and then we'll also send it out through our newsletter listserv. So if you are not registered for Click to Science, I encourage you to register so that you can sign up for our newsletter and receive information about our upcoming webinars and events. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.